Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. Greetings, citizens of Gotham, for joining us live. It is roughly 2:41 p.m. Pacific time, 5:41 on the East Coast. I know I sound like a morning drive radio. 5:41 on the East Coast. The traffic is a little bumped up past the Edens Expressway. Traffic on the fives. I feel very morning radio today. Welcome to the Morning Zoo crew. It's Grandpa and the Webster going to be joining us. I have to talk this way because what's going on in the world? Pretty awful, right? Pretty awful. So why don't we just read the stories in a clown voice? Nazis took over the Capitol building. We're in climate collapse. And billionaires rape and sell children. But at least there's no one within the progressive movement to lead us. Thank you, Democrats. Boink. Like I need some morning radio sound effects. But rest assured, folks, I do got vegan guns going, so that's exciting. Hit the like button. Share this out. We're going to bring Whitney on in a second. And, like, share, and subscribe. I'll answer a super chat right now real quick, and then all the other super chats I will answer after we have Whitney on the show. Sharif Snugs, what's up, dude? Shave your knuckles for justice. Thanks for supporting the show, man. Amazon is investing billions in affordable housing. Oh, that's just got to be awful. This is neo-feudalism. Yep. We are no different than a serf or a miner in a mining town. Yeah. Yes. Your Amazon overlords will make housing for you if you're lucky and don't make waves. They'll throw you out in the street. You're welcome, America. I hope you enjoy being a sharecropper. God damn, that's so painfully true. Yeah, Rockfin crypto is flying. I remember I talking about Bitcoin. It went up to 41, and there's going to be a correction. If you watch any of the shows I told you to watch, it was like, there's going to be a correction. It went all the way down to 32,000. I bought some at 33. It's back up to 35, 36,000. All right. Let's bring Whitney back on the show. We haven't had her on in a little while. Everybody, welcome who's watching on Facebook and the Rockfin. You can support the show by... If you're watching on YouTube, by doing what Sharif just did, hitting the super chat button. Also, there is a tip feature on Rockfin. So let's bring Whitney on the show, everybody. Whitney, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Hey, how's it going?
You can see and hear me all right?
I can. Hopefully you can see me okay. Sorry about my glare. Hopefully it's not too bad.
It's a nice glare. It gives kind of a cabin in the woods sort of writing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Like with a quill pen. That's kind of the vibe. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. We are joined by journalist, repeat guest. We love having you on the show. Whitney Webb is here. First of all, Happy New Year. And
yay!
So much to be excited about in 2021. We start the year off with neo-Nazis having a furry convention in the Capitol, so that was exciting. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things in this interview, not the least of which is Jean-Luc Brunel and Nygaard have been arrested since we spoke last. But I want to talk to you first and foremost about your perceptions. I mean, you obviously cover a lot about what happened at the Capitol January 6th, and how you see this sort of playing out as somebody that's covered a lot about the surveillance state. And because we're in this very precarious spot. What happened was awful. There needs to be repercussions for the people that broke into the Capitol building, some of whom have had automatic weapons and handcuffs and were wearing neo-Nazi paraphernalia. But then there's also the other part of me is very scared that, like, oh, great, now we're just going to use this for Patriot Act 2.0 and taking away more of our personal freedoms and censorship. And like, they're just green lighting all of this stuff. So how did you, what were your first thoughts when you watched the Capitol siege last week? And what do you see now as we're almost, we're 6 days away from it. How do you see this?
Well, I have a lot to say, but I think it's easiest for me anyway to explain how I interpret what happened last week by going a bit back in time to the end of 2019, which is when I first started researching and talking about the 2020 election, because I noticed that there were a lot of national security officials and also front companies for both U.S. and Israeli intelligence that were talking about the 2020 election, how it was going to essentially be an event, not a normal election. It was going to be an event that would completely erode Americans' faith in the democratic system and would essentially be the last, like, real, in a sense, and by real, I mean like previous elections, that this one was going to be different and that it was going to basically fracture the American electorate and totally undermine the majority of Americans' faith in the democratic system, right? So this was back in 2019.
I want to just jump in real quick because now I remember now we had you on the show late summer, early fall, and you mentioned this very thing, that they were the intelligence community was going to use this election to split America and make us, it was like by design. So, and I mean, me personally, I thought it was going to happen more around the actual November election.
Well, me too, but we didn't really know, right? And a lot of the simulations that came after that initial stuff at the end of 2019, like the Transition Integrity Project being one example, started talking about not just the election, but sort of as this whole period, these what they called the Transition Integrity Project, called a dark 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day, right? And so what do you know? There's an event in that very period, and we're told that there's also going to be, at least now, an event on Inauguration Day. But anyway, in this timeline I'm talking about from 2019, there's something that very interesting that happened in March of last year that got no coverage at all, because that was also when the COVID-19 crisis really hit globally. So people were obviously paying attention to that and not to congressional hearings. At this congressional hearing in March, the U.S. National Security State, the FBI and DHS specifically, announced that there was going to be a pivot to domestic terrorism. And the FBI, Joint Terrorism Task Force, and other parts of the FBI that have been involved in the entrapment of Muslim Americans and the creation of these fake terror plots that they then go and foil, at the last minute, and then they use it to justify the increase of their budgets and things like that. I'm sure your viewers probably know that to an extent. Mm-hmm. They said that they were going to pivot their focus from Muslim Americans to people, white Americans on sort of the far right fringe, or what have you, in an attempt to basically prevent, use the same tactics where basically they create what they call individualized threat assessment profiles, or threat profiles of people that they suspect are going to commit some sort of event. And then they go and they harass them, they harass their families, they harass their contacts. And in the past, when this was going on with Muslim Americans, there were cases that would come out where some of these people, because of that extreme pressure from the feds, they were already in a precarious position. They would end up snapping, or in some cases, they would get entrapped in plots where the leaders of those plots ended up being FBI ringleaders. And not long after this pivot happened, we had things with the plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer, where it turns out the ringleader of that plot was an FBI informant that was paid almost $30,000 to set up that whole thing. And that is very disconcerting, right? So at the same hearing, though, we have this lady named Elizabeth Newman from DHS, and she says that there is going to be another 9/11 style event of domestic terror, that it's not going to be bad in terms of numbers killed or maybe the visuals, and that we can see it building and we can't quite stop it, which is very interesting also. So, and since then, after that hearing in March, we had numerous people, many of the same people that were saying in 2019 that the 2020 election was going to play out that way, that they were saying we need a new domestic terror law, we need new domestic terrorism law statutes and things like that, right? So this is all before the 2020 election even takes place. So as far as what happened last week, I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of concerns. So So when we look at the different video feeds of how those people got into the Capitol, there's a huge discrepancy between those that have been promoted by mainstream media and those that have come out on Twitter. And a lot of and other, from people that were there, that were independent media and other things like that, people who were covering it. We now have video of not only from one side, the cops letting them in through the security fence, but also opening the doors to the Capitol. And so, but what mainstream media shows more, they don't show those pictures. What they show instead is the one part where they broke glass in a window and then jumped through the window, implying that there was no assistance from authorities. And so that's why I tend to not agree with characterization of this as a coup attempt, because in what kind of coup attempt do the authorities protecting the building allow those people to come inside? I mean, that honestly doesn't make any sense. And so there's a couple ways to interpret that law enforcement response that I've seen anyway. One is that people are saying this means law enforcement is infiltrated by QAnon and white supremacists, or that this was allowed to happen coming from the top of the national security state. The people that were responsible for this decision were at the top of DC Capitol Police. And so it becomes important to look at the connections of those people. And so the top guy at the head of DC Capitol Police doesn't really have affiliations that I've seen anyway with Trumpers or QAnon or white supremacist groups. Instead, he used to work for a company called Nobliss, and the chairman of the board is the former head of DHS, Michael Chertoff, who was also part of the Transition Integrity Project and one of the key people talking about the election chaos scenario, and a major beneficiary if there is a war on domestic terror launched, as well as former heads of different U.S. intelligence agencies, of which there is now 18, because Space Force was just added to the intelligence community. So for those that think that that's just a fun new branch of the military and Star Trek, here we come. Now it's a pal of the CIA. So,
oh, but Stephen Carell is a funny sitcom on Netflix, so it can't be that bad, right?
Oh my God.
I mean,
yeah, pretty surreal, right? But yeah. I tend to think that this isn't an issue necessarily. So yeah, there is an issue in many parts around the country where there are cops that are definitely sympathetic to these far-right elements. But we also have to keep in mind a lot of these far-right groups for a long time have been infiltrated also by the US government, by the FBI. And, they announced essentially publicly at this congressional hearing that they were going to use this to manufacture consent for this war on domestic terror. And what we see now in the wake of this event last Wednesday are attempts to manufacture consent for that war on domestic terror, focusing specifically on manufacturing consent for that among the left in the United States, specifically wanting progressives and leftists to sign on and cheer this on, when what's key here is that we consider the history of the national security state. When they get these powers, who do they target? Do they go after the right, or do they go after the left and environmental activists and progressives and social movements and things like that? I encourage you to look at the history of what these people do when they get that type of power. I mean, just look at the Dakota pipeline, for example, and how that was handled in comparison to last Wednesday and things like that. I don't think it's just an issue of incompetence or the cops liking people on the right. I think this is a very specific thing here. And I think it's very interesting, too, that we're seeing people from the squad specifically being pushed out in front and leading this response, because I really think they want progressives to rubber stamp this war on progressive terror, on domestic terror, and that they're going to flip this around at some point and use Antifa as a boogeyman. And then the people on the right that feel under pressure right now will be like, yeah, those are the real terrorists, just like they were doing last year. And I think it's notable, too, we have to keep in mind that this war on domestic terror, the foundations for it, have been set up by both parties. And if you look at the executive orders that Trump put out last year, using the BLM protest as justification, that executive order is now being used to charge people that were at the Capitol for sentences much greater than they would have normally received. And that was supposed to be to protect these monuments and other stuff like that, which at the end of the day mean that if progressives want to get together and do a sit-in, for example, of a federally owned building, or they want to do anything really on federal property, the justification being, the narrative being set up now after Wednesday and the type of laws they want to pass can essentially criminalize that activity. And a lot of these domestic terror laws written by Democrats were called out when they tried to pass them previously by the ACLU, not only saying that they would criminalize essentially all dissent from the government, and this is the ACLU saying this, right, that they'll be used to target minorities and mainly progressive activists. So progressives rubber stamp and approve this type of legislation at their own risk, because historically this has been used to go after leftists. I mean, if you look at the coup attempts done by the U.S. abroad, what type of governments do they traditionally target? Right. And it's no coincidence that the people that set up DHS are, a lot of them were former CIA officials involved in things like Vietnam's Phoenix program, which later became the roadmap for Operation Condor in Latin America, which was used to go after leftist, socialist, communist, every variety of people on the left, and killed over 100,000 people. Many more disappeared, right? And, you know, I mean, I think if you look at the history, it's pretty obvious who the national security state is really interested in targeting with these types of laws. And I think it's very interesting that we're seeing this focus on getting progressives specifically to sign off on this.
Yeah, it is interesting. They really, it's that's the thing that I feel so torn, because as a comedian that's driven around this country for the better part of 30 years, gone into small towns, I know how that, you know, militia racist element is, and they can be pretty scary. And they're in a country where they can go buy AR-15s and do whatever they want. And of course, there's no doubt that the intelligence community has infiltrated them, just like they've infiltrated everything. BLM.
Well, right. Absolutely.
And
those people exist too, but I also don't want people, I think it's dangerous to paint all Trump supporters now, or all people that were at that rally and not necessarily in the Capitol, with this broad brush, calling them all insurrectionists, domestic terrorists. And especially if you consider the fact that these people were let into the Capitol, I'm sure there's instances where they chose to let specific people in the Capitol because they wanted them there. You look at, for example, the people that broke into Nancy Pelosi's office. You have prominent MAGA personalities like Nick Fuentes of the America First show or whatever. And you also have Baked Alaska, who's also like a famous alt-right personality. And they were allowed to stream in there. I mean, if this was really a domestic terror attack when the police used cell phone jammers or something like they used against other people that were streaming outside the Capitol, including like progressive outlets like Status Quo and stuff like that, and people that were there covering it for T-Lab who had their streams cut by the police, but those people were allowed to stream from within Pelosi's office. I think they wanted that there was an interest in getting, you know, certain photographs and certain sort of creating a media spectacle that they could use to manufacture consent for this in some way. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that is really suspect about this. And I think there's an effort to sort of drive us into a place of responding to this event just based on pure emotion instead of the facts of the event, not unlike they did after 9/11, to try and get us to consent to things that are not in our interest as a country.
That's a great point, because I'm watching the reaction, especially from the left and so-called progressives, who are now just totally okay with, I mean, like, to just say, okay, these white nationalist organizations are domestic terror groups. Yeah, I would agree with that. Sure, they're terrorizing people. But then when you look at what that will be used for, it'll be used to censor, it'll be used to round up. And now, as you say, like on Sunday for the Force the Vote, there wasn't that many people. But what if 100,000 people would have just peacefully gone to the Capitol building and sat there and said, we're not leaving. You can arrest us. We'll go quietly. We won't resist arrest, but we're not leaving till we get Medicare for all, which is what I think there should be done, because it's a crime that people die because they don't have health insurance, especially in the middle of a pandemic. But now, as you're saying, because, you know, they deliberately let these, you know, this, whatever you want to call it, alt-right out of the box. And I believe these people truly do exist, but I also believe that because I know that they do, but I also believe then they're pushed or, you know, stirred up more by private intelligence, and it will be used as an excuse to just it'll be Patriot Act 2.0, and it'll be used against, so anyone on the left can be targeted, because there's so many crazy things to pull out of this. First of all, if Black Lives Matter would have seized the Capitol like that, they would have been gunned down. I mean, it would have been a slaughter. There wouldn't be 6 people or 5 or whatever it is. It would have been mayhem. I mean, they would have just opened fire on them. They would have sent helicopters. I mean, it would have been nuts.
Well, they wouldn't have been let in, and they wouldn't have been allowed to get that close, and there wouldn't have been so few cops. I mean, you look at the videos, for example, of like the first Finch rushing before they even really get that close to the Capitol. There's like 3 cops there. Really? I mean, look at how militarized things like Occupy Wall Street war, or the anti-Iraq war protest war, or, you know, any meaningful protest movement that's come since. I mean, this was deliberate, and it was deliberate for a reason. And the fact that there's been no investigation of the DC police, and they still haven't issued an official report of what's going on. And instead of screaming about that, people in Congress are saying these people are insurrectionists and domestic terrorists and committed sedition, which is really dangerous, by the way, because that implies they're going to invoke the Sedition Act, which was used to target people, whistleblowers like Julian Assange and stuff like that, right? And is basically the sedition as defined is about advocating for the overthrow of the government, right? So if you're like saying, you know, we need to go sit in Congress peacefully, right? Or whatever. I mean, the government could argue, oh, you want to overthrow us, blah, blah, blah. Or if you're like the government, you know, the CIA is the real government and that needs to stop. I mean, they can say that's sedition now and stuff like that. You know, it's a very slippery slope, but why aren't the people in Congress demanding that the DC police people testify immediately? Where's their report? All of this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. Also, the fact that the DC police guy and the FBI both are putting or asking that regular people help identify the people that were at the Capitol for them. Like, they can't do it on their own with all their advanced surveillance technology, their advanced facial recognition technology. I mean, the FBI has technology where if you have your hand raised, like on a picture on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, they can peel your fingerprints off of it and fingerprint you just because you have your hand raised. And so I'm supposed to believe that people with access to that need my help to say, oh, that's my friend from high school. That's this guy who's lives 3 doors down from me. To me, that's like conditioning that, you know, we need to start ratting out our neighbors because they have opposing political views from us, which again is a very slippery slope. And I can tell you in CIA-backed dictatorships like there existed in Chile, I mean, people just would, you know, didn't like their neighbor for some reason and would just call the police and be like, they're a communist when they weren't actually. And then you never see them again. I mean, yikes.
I mean, the thing that's scary is this playbook has been played before. Like you say, in Chile, they did this, and anytime there's been some sort of fascist takeover, they use the far right in some way, shape, or form. Like even the Nazis used the brown shirts and then they turned on them. And then that's always some group that kind of gets propped up that does some of the violence. And then they say, oh, these people are bad. And now we need to take more rights away to keep you safe. It's really, the fact that I find it hard to believe that it's just, I mean, yes, that's the thing. There's not a lot. There's no either ors in this. There's a lot of both are trues, which are correct. There are absolute neo-Nazis within police departments, or at least police departments that are sympathetic to them. But there are
at the CIA too. You know what I mean? The CIA, after World War II, brought to the U.S. a bunch of Nazis, Operation Paperclip. President Truman signed off on that, and the people that have been running the CIA, unaccountable for decades, are basically Nazis or were trained by Nazis and are their ideological successors. I mean, that's wild, right? So what they're doing now, in my opinion, is basically using the majority of Americans' extreme rejection of ethno-nationalism and ethno-fascism against us, when in reality, a lot of the people that are running the U.S. intelligence community and the national security state are themselves ethno-nationalists or racists. I mean, just look at Joe Biden, for example. This is the guy that's supposed to unite America, and he's the guy that eulogized the most racist person in Congress in the 20th century, Strom Thurmond, who did the longest filibuster in congressional history at the time to prevent the Civil Rights Act from being passed. And Democrats boycotted his funeral, and Joe Biden's like, I'm going to give the guys a eulogy. He was great. and the guy that passed the 94 crime bill and claimed to have written the first Patriot Act, and now he's here for Patriot Act 2.0, and he's going to fight the racists.
I know.
I mean, that's what we're supposed to believe, but that's the narrative that's being sold to us, and it's being promoted by people like the Squad and stuff like that. So I think we really need to step back. It's really easy to be emotional on times like this, but they want us to be emotional and not to think critically about this. And they want us to sign off and consent to policies that are going to be used to target people on the left and the right and prevent us from creating any sort of meaningful change in our government. And so like now, for example, if there was to be a force the vote protest, like you were talking about earlier, where people go and say, we're not leaving till there's a vote on Medicare for all. Well, now after Wednesday, that will never happen. That can be called domestic terrorism now, based on what is coming from people that are supposed to be supporting Medicare for all and a lot of other policies. And sit-ins and federal buildings, for example, during the civil rights movement was a key part of that, and was a big part of how that movement was able to affect real change. They want to criminalize that type of activity, and now they've done it. And now people on the left are being like, yeah, let's go farther. And not only that, let's take all the, increase tech censorship to huge degrees and empower Silicon Valley to huge degrees. When Silicon Valley not only came into existence largely with funding from the CIA's In-Q-Tel, but they've essentially merged with the military, and the people running the military's AI modernization policy and also the CIA's AI modernization policy are all Silicon Valley executives.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's insane. That's fascism. You want to call out fascism? Silicon Valley's fascist, but at the same time, a bunch of top DNC posts are also held by former bigwig Silicon Valley executives from Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, whatever.
Yeah, and they backed all these Democratic candidates, and you bring up great points. So people should really be clear here. So like when the Sunrise Movement sat outside Pelosi's office and wouldn't leave,
illegal now.
Yeah, that's
terrorism.
Illegal now. That's domestic terrorism. You pulled down a Confederate statue, you're a domestic terrorist. So I hope everybody understands that. You block a street for Black Lives Matter, you're a domestic terrorist now. Especially if you do any sort of government building, you are a domestic terrorist. So I hope everybody's real clear on what this means and what's going to happen. And I wish the American people would wake up and realize that they're actually in class warfare.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. The billionaire class has been pretty open about this. And you look at what happened last year. Who made all the money? I mean, the wealth of the billionaire class exploded last year. And what happened to the rest of us? Massive wealth transfer. And now people are understandably angry. Things are more unequal than ever. They know people are going to dissent. And look at the laws they're trying to pass and trying to get us to sign off on. We got to look at the big picture here and keep in mind who the real enemy is. Is the real enemy the person with the Trump lawn sign in their yard or the MAGA hat? Or is it the billionaire class that's trying to play us off against each other? We're pointing the finger at our neighbor, screaming, you're the terrorist, when really the people that are the terrorists are people like the CIA, the largest terrorist organization in the world. Who are real domestic terrorists? That should be in prison forever. Dick Cheney, pretty much everyone in the Bush administration. But no, Dick Cheney is going to be advising Biden on foreign policy now.
Jesus.
So what we have is the freaking uniparty trying to divide and conquer us with the oldest playbook in the book, and it is working. And the more they divide and conquer us, the more they are going to consolidate power and screw us all over in a way that we will never be able to dissent again or change things. And that's what they want. And so this is just arguably the most critical juncture in American history that we stand at right now. Right. And what we do from here on out is really going to determine the future of this country in a huge way. I really can't state that enough.
Yeah, it to me feels like it's too late. It feels like there's no real progressive leadership. Not even, I mean, obviously these people in the Democrat, Bernie and the Squad, they're
fuck them.
They're fucking sellouts. They've done nothing.
But what they've done is tried to, they've tried to tell us that these people are like political saviors. And there's this mentality in the US on both sides that, as long as we vote the right people into power at the national level, have the right person sitting in the White House, then they're going to fix everything for us. Yeah. Progressives have always been focused on people-driven movements and people-driven change. It's time to realize that the power is with the people. You don't need a figurehead anymore. It's time to get local and get vocal and get active. But what they've done now, with COVID, restrictions on physically meeting, but now with the online censorship, they're restricting people being able to discuss, to organize, even online. So, I mean, our ruling class is scared of us. That's why they're doing this. And so I'm of the opinion that even if it seems like we've lost, we can't act like that. Do we want to be remembered as people that went down quietly, or people that were like, fuck you, Nazi CIA, until the very end? I mean, I'd rather be in the latter category personally. So, but I think the only solution to this is local. We can't go to DC and protest anymore.
Well,
we can't go to state capitals either, because they're militarizing those ahead of Inauguration Day.
Oh, yeah. Because there's like a credible threat. All 50 Capitol buildings are going to be attacked by Trump domestic terrorists. So now that's good. Everyone's they want everything up in smoke. I mean, the thing you really saw from the reaction of this, I had Lee Camp. We were talking about it on our podcast, Government Secrets. Is Lee Camp brought up a great point. He said, it's weird, people storming the Capitol building and doing that. Okay, there should be a fair amount of outrage to that. That's crazy. It's, it's dangerous. But how come 60,000 people dying a year because they don't have health insurance? How come the same amount of outrage by the corporate ruling class, the corporate media? We don't, all the other things that are as bad, if not way worse than because people are like, this is the worst thing ever. Last Wednesday was not the worst thing ever that's ever happened. And all of these things, and there's this sweeping outcry by the media and Congress, and everybody's going to do something about it. But it's really because the ruling class was threatened on Wednesday. You might not like the people that did it. You might not agree with them, but the people in power got threatened. Congress, I mean, I'm not happy there was people wearing Auschwitz stuff in the Capitol building, but the fact that a bunch of Congress and senators from both parties were running scared, I didn't have a problem with that. I'll be quiet. That didn't bother me at all. And, I think people don't seem to, they're doing such a fantastic job of keeping us all divided. It's unbelievable. And even the so-called indie media, the so-called progressive media, the way they went after Jimmy because he just wanted to give everybody help get health care. And
it tells you a lot.
Yeah.
It tells you a whole lot about where their priorities are and what they think matters. And I mean, just how easily, the divide and conquer playbook is the oldest one in the book. And we as a country are going to get so screwed over if we cannot collectively realize, like you said earlier, this is a class war. This is the elites versus everyone else. And those guys, the billionaires right now, they're playing for keeps.
Yes.
A lot of the surveillance technology and things they want to set up are designed so that people can never meaningfully dissent ever again. Our government has been beta testing this since the Vietnam War in the late 60s. And technology was a key part of that then, but technology's advanced a lot since the 60s. So think about the kind of stuff they can do, what they did in that original testing program for what this is, and the people that were involved in that, as I mentioned earlier, helped set up DHS. I mean, they killed like an estimated like 60,000 people. They just kidnapped and tortured and assassinated random people that they said were leftists, but it was a computer algorithm essentially that put a lot of people on those lists. Sound familiar? And basically the idea was to make everyone so afraid that they were going to be kidnapped in the middle of the night at any given time that everyone would just be extremely obedient to the government. That's wild. That's terrorism. That's the real terrorism.
Yeah, the real Nazis and terrorists are the CIA. Yeah. I mean, and NSA for sure. I mean, and I hope people.
And we're funding them with tax money. It's time to stop paying taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. It's, I mean, especially if you're behind on rent, which many Americans are. I mean, that's the other thing that's coming. They have to know that with this economic collapse that is looming, we haven't even begun the economic collapse that is coming as a result of COVID.
For sure.
All these bubbles that were there before COVID, housing bubble.
And no one in Congress wants to help you. They are all passing laws, and they did last year too, to just throw money to stuff that doesn't help regular Americans. It helps them and the people that fund them. Right. Our political class does not serve the people. We need to stop acting like these political celebrities that like to march out in front of us are actually here to represent the people. Ilhan Omar's hero, from her own words, are people like Madeleine Albright and Margaret Thatcher. Are you kidding me? This is supposed to be like our progressive hero, Margaret Thatcher. I mean, I just can't even, I mean, you know, the female crazy, you know, Reagan equivalent prime minister of the UK. Like what?
And
that's a progressive icon.
That said it was okay that 500,000 Iraqi children were dead.
That's Madeleine Albright.
Yeah, that's another hero. Yeah, well, this is we're in interesting times, and I hope people wake up that it's class warfare. I really hope they wake up and unify that this is class warfare.
Well, you know what's interesting is that basically the left and the right, a lot of the stuff we're mad about, if you boil it down, is about this class warfare, but they've manipulated the narrative, largely thanks to people both in mainstream and independent even media, so much that it's become so distorted that we can't realize that we're actually agreeing about a lot of stuff. So, for example, how do you define, most people, well, I don't know how you define fascism personally, Graham, but a lot of people use, you know, the Mussolini era corporatism definition, where basically the corporations and the state merge, right? And so, you know, when we're talking about when I talk about fascism, you know, that's what I tend to think of. And, you know, there's other elements. There's usually like worship and glorification of the military, civil religion, and some other stuff that gets thrown in there, and sort of some other political ideologies can come in, right? But then you have people on the right screaming all day long about Marxism and communism, and how a lot of people, if you talk to them, they define that as when the state controls the business sector, right? So really, you know, when you boil it down, in the United States right now, we have the corporations, not just Silicon Valley, but corporations in general in the state have been merged arguably for a really long time. Yeah. So a lot of our grievances, when you boil it down to the root of it, on both sides are really similar. And look how much we are screaming at each other, when really what most people want is some sort of populist movement, whether from the left or the right, to separate the private and public sectors. It's crazy when you think about it.
Right. And they're still having some little dumb cat fight over this $2,000. We can't even get that. We can't even get $2,000, which is still not enough money if you're behind on rent 6 to 9 months. And
but we have money to make Space Force.
We got Space Force money. We got money for the $740 billion war budget. We always got money to bail out Wall Street, and we can't seem to figure out how to do anything that helps the people. And the propaganda machine has been so effective in keeping everybody divided, because like the right, when they say socialism, they don't even know what they're talking about. Socialism means workers own the means of production, and they think it means like Stalin. They don't even know what socialism means.
Well, that's what I mean. The narrative is so warped. If you actually talk to these people enough to get them to define what, you know, grinds their gears, you know, about, you know, the ideology they're railing against, it comes down to that. You know, it's tyranny when the state and business sectors are the same, and everything is controlled by the government, right? And so, but fascism too, look, when the corporations and the government merge, I mean, you're basically talking about a very similar power structure that the majority of Americans are against, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we can do a lot of good with dialogue, but it requires us not being so, you know, being in the position that the government right now wants a lot of us to be in mentally and emotionally. And, you know, honestly, if there is any sort of like meaningful protest movement at some point in the future, I think at this point, it probably has to be bipartisan, because otherwise they'll paint it as Antifa terror or MAGA terror or whatever, if it's only one group and not the other one. I mean, what we really need is just a mass populist movement that's very clear about what the issues are. I mean, the unchecked corporate power of Silicon Valley is something progressives should oppose, and obviously conservatives oppose what Silicon Valley is doing right now. So why is there no movement to storm Silicon Valley, for example? Right? Or you know, why, if the enemy of QAnon's the deep state, why aren't they storming Langley, Virginia, the CIA headquarters? You know. I mean,
well, everybody,
I'd love to see that personally.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to see a siege of Langley, Virginia, the CIA building, and the NSA or somebody just overtakes their servers and takes them offline. That would be amazing to watch. Folks, you're watching The Political Vigilante. Please hit the like button. If you're new to the show, please subscribe. YouTube has been unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. Welcome to The Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. I'm here with Whitney Webb. Thank you so much for joining us today. I wanted to talk to you about since you and I, you've been on the show last, some significant things. Obviously, you and I have both covered Epstein. You've covered it very extensively. So several things have happened. Peter Nygard has been arrested. They call him the Canadian Epstein. Very similar ties to some of the same people. Prince Andrew, celebrities. He had some creepy, fucking horrifying island. Jean-Luc Brunel, who direct ties, friends with Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Also in the modeling industry. Nygard and Brunel, no shocker, both in the modeling industry, because we know from all the research
or fashion industry like Wexner, right? Nygard was in that too.
Fashion industry, that's right, fashion. And that's part of their recruiting techniques is they go to young girls and say, we'll make you famous, and then they get trafficked. It's just horrifying. Anybody watching, please, I have a whole Epstein playlist, and please follow all of Whitney's work on Mint Press News and Unlimited Hangout and Last American Vagabond. If I'm missing anything, please let me know. Because she's done deep dives on all of this. So then Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, put up some ridiculous $30 million bond thing to some husband that she never had, and now he's whatever.
Well, Scott Borgeson, it's interesting. He's his company was funded into existence by Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google, and apparently he's married to Ghislaine Maxwell. That's pretty interesting. Eric Schmidt, by the way, who I mentioned how Silicon Valley earlier has merged with the military and is running their AI modernization plans. The guy heading that commission that's doing that is Eric Schmidt also. So pretty interesting.
That's so weird. Every time we get together, there's always some weird creep tie between some Silicon Valley and the intelligence community and Epstein. Isn't that odd? Every time we talk, that happens. What a wacky coincidence. How does this keep happening?
Wacky, totally wacky.
So wacky. And speaking of Eric Schwartz, if you read the book When WikiLeaks Met Google, Julian, it's a great book. And Julian, it's just transcriptions of that conversation. And then Julian realized later that they,
Eric Schmidt's a spook, basically.
Yeah. And how Google's been working with CIA hand in glove since about
the whole time.
Yeah. Which is, so my questions are with this, and more revelations have come out with Brunel and Nygard and Ghislaine's, fake husband or whatever that's about. But how come we have seen, where are the mugshots?
Exactly.
There are mugshots in the neck with all these. We were just talking about the siege at the Capitol. All the people that have been arrested, there are mugshots. Immediately.
Yeah.
How come all we have seen is a sketch drawing of a Zoom meeting where Ghislaine Maxwell is supposedly testifying, but she's under custody? How do you explain this? What is this?
Well, I'm trying not to be too conspiratorial. If you ask my personal opinion, I have strong suspicions that people like Ghislaine Maxwell are not necessarily in the facilities we're told they're being in. Because, remember when Epstein was in that prison in Manhattan, he had a cellmate, he had a mugshot. It's just very interesting that people that have followed have not, we haven't been given that same information. And we hear all these sob stories, I guess you could call them, in the media about Ghislaine being like, oh, her life is so hard in prison. She's being moved from cell to cell. She gets woken up every 15 minutes. Her life is so miserable in prison. And like with Peter Nygard, it's been pretty similar. He's like, I get weaker every day. I'm at risk of COVID in the prison. The prison food is killing me. Wah. Even though, he raped like thousands of women or something. So, I don't have a lot of sympathy for these assholes, but it's really interesting to see the media narrative and the lack of questions about, can we have some evidence that Ghislaine's in prison? How long has it been now? It's been a while. I think maybe some sort of like verifiable information would be nice. Maybe like other prisoners that have seen her in the prison, maybe around somewhere. I haven't heard any of that. Just interesting when you compare it to what happened with Epstein. And there's a lot of So the Nygaard arrest and the prosecution is different in some important ways from what's going on with Brunel. So what's going on with Brunel, for example, isn't the same. It's the probe that was opened by French authorities in August 2019. They haven't made any arrests until Brunel. And Brunel's, they finally, it's sort of similar what happened with Ghislaine, right? Everyone knew Ghislaine was guilty from the very beginning, and they waited over a year to do anything about it. So we're told, right? Mm-hmm. With Brunel, it's pretty similar. And what's interesting about the Brunel case is that, yes, he's been charged for raping minors, but he hasn't been charged with human trafficking, despite the fact that numerous Epstein victims, including Virginia Roberts, and others, talk about how Epstein bragged all the time how Brunel brought him thousands of women, right? And just like numerous, just tons of documentation about Brunel trafficking women for Epstein, and even French media referring to Brunel as the real, Epstein's reel, like a fishing rod reel to reel girls in, and they chose not to charge him with human trafficking. I find that a little telling. I mean, I'm glad he's been charged for something, but we'll see how far it goes. What's also interesting about the French investigation is that they're also going after another former modeling executive, whose name is, I forget his name. I think it's like Gerald Marie or something like that. That was in charge of the Elite Models Agency, which had ties. A lot of the models there ended up having ties to Epstein, or former models there. Naomi Campbell was represented by them, for example. Lots of pictures of her around Maxwell and Epstein, and also Virginia Roberts in a picture with her as well, and also Nicole Junkerman, who was involved with Epstein as well in investments, and was on a plane alone with him and attended a meeting with Epstein in the UK right before the Iraq war vote with 2 US senators whose names we still don't know, right? Which is such a crazy story. But anyway, so that's basically the French investigation. And from what I've seen since Brunel's arrest, no stories in English or in French about how that case has advanced against Brunel, which is interesting because when you look at Peter Nygaard, there's been several stories because Nygaard and Brunel were arrested in like similar timeframes, both in mid-December, just a couple days apart, right? But since Nygaard's arrest, he was arrested in Canada. Several updates have come out. There's been hearings and things like that, but nothing for Brunel. So, these are things that I've been noticing. I'd really like more information to come out so we know what's going on there. I don't necessarily trust the French authorities. Emmanuel Macron is France's leader right now. Used to work for the Bank of the Rothschild family, which of course Ghislaine Maxwell told Maria Farmer, for example, that she talked all the time about how the Rothschilds were her father's and her family's biggest protectors. So I don't necessarily know how much I'm going to trust France's government in pursuing this. Going to Nygaard now, what's interesting is that, so he was arrested in Canada and is currently in prison in Canada. I believe he has another hearing tomorrow, but he's facing charges to be extradited to the United States because he was charged by the same district that charged Epstein and also Ghislaine, SDNY, the Southern District of Manhattan, right? So what's interesting about that is, this is my opinion, so this is me speculating. I'm going to be pretty open about that. I think the reason that it's been only this district, which if you look at the history of SDNY, has had just like very corrupt, historically, district attorneys and ways of going about things. It's not a very clean district, and oftentimes, only superficially goes after corruption, or only goes after corrupt entities as a way of covering things up or consolidating power for other factions. If you look at how that district runs things, in my opinion, I think the reason that all of these cases, Epstein, Ghislaine, Nygaard, are coming out of there is that means the prosecutors in that district get to control very tightly discovery, meaning the amount of information that gets made public during the court hearings and court proceedings, and they decide exactly what to charge them with. Because remember, I talked about this when Ghislaine was arrested. I came on the show and we talked about this. They admit in the indictment that she was involved in the rape and sexual assault of these girls, and she wasn't charged for that. And those charges, they admit she did it, and those charges would be much much more extreme than the charges he's currently facing. Why didn't they charge her for that? There's these weird questions that come up. And so in my opinion, this is a way of controlling the information that comes out about the Epstein case, in a way of sort of memory holding it, a way of making it look like they're doing something, but when in reality, they're trying to keep certain things from coming out.
That has to be what this is about. Because again, I always refer to your interview, your conversation with Maria Farmer, where, and it's a thing, you, myself, and others who've covered this case have always asked about how Maria Farmer said, they would, anytime somebody is arrested, they always try to make sure they frame the case to just this, or keep people debating
a limited hangout, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. This is keep it in this context, so that, because the greater the key, and I know you know this, and I just want my audience to know this, the key with all of this Epstein stuff. So these are the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world. You're talking about the Rothschilds. You're talking about the British royal family. You're talking about several American presidents from both parties. You're talking about the Saudi royal family.
It's so wild. Yeah.
You're talking about the most wealthy people in the world. So what they do not want is the real information to come out. They want to just make it seem like, and that's always how this has always been done. This is the Catholic Church did the same tactic. We got this one bad priest, a couple of bad apples, but that's
exactly
hide the systemic institutional allowance of this. The institutions are profiting from this, because that's the thing why I'm like, they talk about this, and you bring up the point of discovery. Yes, what no one is talking about in the corporate media. It's only shows like ours. Because I keep going, okay, so not only were the mugshots, where are all of we saw the FBI wheel out all these hard drives and photos out of Epstein's place in New York City and the Virgin Islands. And I'm sure I'm assuming the French seized Brunel's and
maybe that hasn't come out. They haven't talked about raiding his properties. He was picked up in the airport. Right. So he was supposed to be taking a flight to Senegal, and they take him in the airport. So he wasn't arrested at home. I haven't seen any information about his properties being raided. So that's very significant. One thing a lot of people don't know about Jean-Luc Brunel, by the way, is that his business in the 80s, guess who was the legal representative for Jean-Luc Brunel's companies in the 80s? Steve Mnuchin, the current Secretary of the Treasury.
God.
This stuff is so deep. And so for people to think that SDNY is actually going to blow this all wide open or whatever, are, huffing hopium. That's my opinion. And it's unfortunate, but if they control discovery, if they control who the prosecutors are, the people that are supposed to be going after these people and investigating this stuff, if they're controlled and they only go this far, and they don't ever get to people like Leslie Wexner, who are obviously involved and should obviously be in prison for the rest of their pathetic existences. It stays right there, but they can say, yeah, we took these people to justice. Yeah, but if you look at the U.S. justice system, people that watch your show, Graham, obviously know the U.S. justice system is corrupt as hell and doesn't work and is really an injustice system. So, I would take a lot of these recent arrests with a grain of salt. We really have to see what happens. But in my opinion, they're trying to keep too much information from coming out. And going back to what we talked about last Wednesday, now they're, trying to censor stuff that they are saying is QAnon specifically. It's no coincidence that we're having people on MSM say stuff like the Epstein scandal is the gateway to QAnon and things like this, trying to, and why QAnon, which is an obvious psyop, most likely by U.S. military intelligence, was always so focused on pedophilia and Epstein from the very beginning as a way to discredit it also. But now if you're going to censor everything with this broad brush of, it's tied to QAnon, how long until they start scrubbing Epstein information from the internet or censoring reporting on the Epstein scandal that they don't like, that doesn't fit this mainstream media narrative, whether it comes from the Miami Herald or Netflix or NBC News or whatever?
Which means they'll come after our shows.
I mean, eventually, I think so, yeah, because I mean, the type of conversation we've been having today is not in their interest, that's for sure. You know, we're asking questions and bringing up points that are really dangerous to the people that were, you know, for example, involved in the Epstein scandal or had knowledge of it, which is actually most of the U.S. political class. I mean, Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, openly admitted that and was like, we all knew what Epstein was doing for decades.
For decades.
And that didn't get covered on mainstream media. The fact that she's like, we all knew, right? So, you know, those people don't want information like this coming out, and they want people to forget about Epstein, in my opinion.
Of course. That's why Maxwell's trial was set for next summer. Really? We can't get a trial going? Or is it COVID? It's all COVID. We can't have a trial because of COVID. Is that what it is?
That's what they say, but they do all this stuff over Zoom. So really what it is I guess maybe they're expecting some big, and it seems very likely now, given recent events, some huge censorship, internet censorship hammer dropping hard. And so everyone that's like, this crap with Ghislaine is a huge injustice, people being mad and screaming about it. Well, we're so used to, instead of getting out in the real world and being mad and being like, you know, going to the halls of government and you know, showing publicly that we're mad, you know, we're used to going into these little corrals, digital corrals on social media and venting all of our frustrations there. And now they're taking that away from us. And people are like, well, what do we do now? You know, it's been set up very conveniently, you know, for the power structure. And we really have to start thinking about how do we start fighting against this and actually, you know, getting some real justice. Because if people like Ghislaine Maxwell and Jean-Luc Brunel and Peter Nygaard get off with like slaps on the wrist, or they make deals with the feds and they walk, what does that mean for the people that are on behalf of intelligence or whatever that are doing this stuff now? You know, they're like, we can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want to kids.
Whatever we want.
Is that the message we want to send as a society? I really hope not.
Yeah, I know. And then they'll just use whatever boogeyman of the day, Muslim terrorists, and now today it's white nationalists, to take away our rights and let this happen. No, that's the thing that's just ringing in my head is what you said about QAnon. So now they're going to, anyone that's ever talked about Epstein, which includes myself and you and Sean Atwood and others, we're going to just be labeled QAnon nutties. We're just, oh, you guys.
Hey, well, Sean Atwood's been promoting the crazy QAnon lawyer, Lynn Wood. So it's not going to be easy for them to censor him, right? And they may use type of stuff like that to be like, look at all these people that covered Epstein. They also are into QAnon.
Right.
And then bam, 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 we all get taken down for being QAnon light or whatever. I mean, who knows? It doesn't really matter. I mean, just like you were talking about how people went after Jimmy Dore and called him a fascist enabler and right-wing sympathizer and crazy stuff like this. I mean, for people covering Epstein that are on the left, like you, Graham, I mean, they can do the same thing. You know, I mean, because mainstream media is trying to regain hegemony by censoring all of us, and they'll say whatever is convenient for them to say, as long as it means that we get quieter or our platforms get smaller or we get censored and we go away.
All the more reason to go to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, ladies and gentlemen, and sign up, where you can see all my bonus content. And Whitney Webb, you have unlimited hangout on Rockfin.
I do.
They don't censor. They're blockchain, they're cryptocurrency. It's been my backup plan the last year and a half that I've been posting on their website. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Do you got time to talk about one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I do.
Sweet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Political Vigilante. Hit the like button. We got 1,400 people watching, which is pretty awesome. And we've got, how many likes do we got? 700 likes. Well, that's inadequate, folks. You are failing as a viewership. So get the like button, get the likes up to at least 1,000. We shouldn't be at 50% likes of viewers. That's not good. So be good YouTubers and hit the like button. And also thank you to everybody who's watching, also on Facebook and Rockfin. So I'm joined here by Whitney Webb. Whitney, you've been doing a lot of great work. We've talked about Epstein. We talked about what happened at the Capitol. We've talked about In the pack, we had you back. We had you a while ago to talk about warp speed. And there's a new story that you said you're working on that you're going to be dropping soon. Tell us what this is.
Okay, so this is about the hack you may have heard of and most likely forgotten about because of how how crazy things have been lately. The hack of SolarWinds, which was basically this company that ran in the background and basically had God mode access to systems around the world, but numerous U.S. federal agencies, including the military, the Treasury Department, and also the entire Department of Justice email system was compromised. And by the way, the DOJ didn't let that out until the exact day of the events at the Capitol last Wednesday. They waited to talk about that then. Maybe they knew, since they, run the FBI, that there was going to be some sort of event that day. I don't know. Because we all knew because they announced it on Twitter like weeks before. Anyway, sorry, getting
and
ahead
just
of myself.
Wonder that there weren't enough cops there. It wasn't like deliberate to make sure it was easy to get into the Capitol building.
So anyway, so the SolarWinds hack has been huge, and what's really interesting is what happened in the aftermath afterwards. Because what we have now is the U.S. intelligence community saying it was likely Russia, and now they're trying, in the lack of evidence, trying to build a case saying, oh yeah, it was definitely Russia, because their first report was allegedly issued by the intelligence community because Trump had suggested that China was responsible, and the U.S. intelligence community wanted to be like, no, likely Russia's responsible. And of course that was taken by mainstream media, and they were like, Russia did it, and that same sort of narrative. But what's really interesting is that right after SolarWinds was hacked, who was the first person they called to fix the issue? They called CrowdStrike, which was, if you were familiar with the whole WikiLeaks 2016 thing, was also involved in saying that it was Russia. They never actually examined the DNC servers, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people are probably familiar with that story. So it's very interesting they go specifically with CrowdStrike first. Then we learned that the former head of DHS's CISA that was fired by Trump and is a former Microsoft executive, Chris Krebs, his consultancy firm that's run also, the two guys that created it, Chris Krebs, and the other guy is the former security officer for Facebook. Their consulting firm is now telling SolarWinds how to fix their issues or whatever. So what's interesting, though, and what my article is about specifically, is that so they're saying basically that this was done because a back door was inserted into this program that allowed whoever used that back door access into all these government systems. And it wasn't U.S. federal agencies, just them, by the way. It was a bunch of huge corporations. So they're claiming that this is Russia, but they haven't been able to get evidence about like exactly how it was done or whatever. But what's interesting is at the exact time this back door has apparently been there since October or November 2019. There's a company that SolarWinds acquired right during that period of time that's called Samanage, or I think that's how it's pronounced. It's spelled Samanage. And so if you look at the press releases about the acquisition, they say this company is based in Cary, North Carolina, which implies it's a U.S. company. But actually, if you look at it, it's was created in 2007 by some guy that used to teach IDF cadets about cyber hacking and all of this stuff. It's based in Israel. And every single venture capital firm that set this up has ties to Isabel Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, who was herself personally involved in the Promise software scandal that was basically Robert Maxwell, their father, had a huge role in, which involved the insertion of backdoors and spying all around the world. And it turns out SolarWinds, right? This wasn't just the U.S. government. This was governments all around the world, millions of devices with classified information. I mean, it's really crazy when you think about it. And one of the ways they did this was compromising Microsoft. And I talked about in my article that I put out last year on Isabel Maxwell and what she did after 1995, her very odd and cozy ties with both Microsoft co-founders, Paul Allen and Bill Gates. By the way, Paul Allen was part of this exclusive social club in the early 2000s that Jeffrey Epstein was a member of, Naomi Campbell, and a bunch of other people in Epstein's orbit. Paul Allen was part of that. And Nicole Junkerman, who I mentioned earlier, was also seen cavorting around with that guy at a time when she was also involved pretty heavily with Jeffrey Epstein. So that's pretty interesting. And when Isabel Maxwell talks about Bill Gates to The Guardian in like 2003, she basically like, she normally has like a British sounding accent. She starts talking with a fake US Southern Belle accent, The Guardian says, and starts purring. This is The Guardian's words. She purrs and talks about how she convinced Bill Gates to give her money, and she gets like this whole like swanky, flirty attitude when talking about Bill Gates. I mean, it's just beyond bizarre. So the fact that it was allegedly Microsoft source code that was accessed and Microsoft tools that were used and things like that to also facilitate the hack, and you have this Maxwell tie, you have this tie to like Israeli, I mean, it's just really interesting that we're being told right away that it's Russia, and there's like no meaningful investigation. Why aren't they looking at this company that is, by all indications, quite shady? I mean, and not only that, but the other venture capital firm, the one that's not tied to Isabel Maxwell, which is called like Gemini Ventures or Gemini Israel Ventures, the people that set that up were involved in the Jonathan Pollard espionage scandal in the 1980s. You may have heard about Jonathan Pollard because he was recently pardoned by Trump and sent on a private plane back to Israel that was furnished by Sheldon Adelson. But Jonathan Pollard was largely considered to be the most damaging spy for U.S. national security in the history of the country. And in the 1980s, gave a bunch of information about the U.S.'s nuclear arsenal to Israel to further their illegal nuclear program. By the way, they're not signatories of any of those non-proliferation treaties for nukes, chemical weapons, biological weapons, what have you, right? So definitely wild, and it's not being talked about at all. And basically, the SolarWinds hack has essentially been memory holed, and the damage is, the fallout from it is still ongoing, and it's not really a story for most people in mainstream media, especially not now, and it probably won't be for some time. We'll see, but we'll see if there. But what's interesting now is because of what happened with the Assange case, right? These and also with like the Hunter Biden laptop precedent that was set with Twitter on social media, anything that's leaked that comes out, if they can say it came from this or whatever, or something was accessed that way and it does get published, I mean, they're going to go crazy. Like all the different efforts to go after publications and stuff like that we saw previously could get really wild. And I think it's also interesting too, the timing of this and the claim that this laptop containing national security information was allegedly taken from the Capitol is interesting, because if leaked information does come out and it happened to have been acquired during the SolarWinds hack, they can blame it on the theft of this computer and be like, oh, it's the QAnoners that did this or something. I mean, I think we could see this play out a couple different ways. This last part, again, I'm speculating, right? But I have a feeling that a lot of the stuff that happened with SolarWinds and them trying to blame it on a nation state, there's been this claim too that a lot of the with this domestic terror narrative we were talking about earlier, that they were trying to set up this claim that there's going to be a cyber attack on the U.S. by a nation state and they'll be assisted by domestic terrorists. So we've heard in the mainstream media narrative for 4 years that Trump worked with Russia, blah, blah, blah. So what better way to say the MAGA people, the QAnon people, currently the target of this domestic terror pivot, are working with Russia, and look at all this damage they've done, or something like that.
Yeah,
I think it's possible.
It totally makes sense. I mean, because the thing that's, and why this is, so the Russia hack the 2016 election has been completely debunked. It's preposterous. Yeah. And they were saying, I literally did a video showing a woman from CBS 2 weeks before the election saying Russia's hacking, they're meddling again. And then when Biden won, it's like, oh, we don't talk about Russia anymore. So I guess Russia they couldn't figure out how to hack this election. So, or only down ballot races where the corporate Democrats lost, that those are the only races they could hack.
Well, here's the other weird thing, right? So there was this center set up by DHS and had it was an interagency effort, and also had Silicon Valley companies, including Google, on it that was in place before the election to keep the election from being hacked. And election day wasn't hacked, right? But then that day, this Chris Krebs guy, who was in charge of that center at the time before he was fired, said election day is halftime. We're going to stay open another month, which means when he made that announcement, that meant they were going to close the 15th. The SolarWinds hack happens on December 14th. And then Chris Krebs comes around and is now advising SolarWinds. I mean, it definitely seems a little too convenient for these people. But I think this whole theme of cyber attacks and we're in us being told it's this nation state or that nation state, we have to pay a lot of attention to that, because the same people that were saying there's going to be election chaos in 2020, it's going to be the end of U.S. democracy and all of this stuff, we're also saying get ready for a huge nation state hack that's going to take down the U.S. power grid and stuff like that. And then recently we have like this power outage in Pakistan and apparently parts of Iran as well. We have people like the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab. By the way, Isabel Maxwell is the World Economic Forum's technology pioneer. And the other backer of the Salmonage company I was talking about earlier is Salesforce, headed by Mark Benioff, who is on the World Economic Forum Board of Trustees and the inaugural chair of their fourth industrial revolution board is set up in San Francisco, right? And so the head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, has said after COVID-19, there's going to be a cyber pandemic, a digital pandemic, meaning a pandemic of cyber attacks that are going to target the financial system, specifically the very financial system that's due to collapse because of all the crap that's gone on over the past several years and the crazy money printing that happened last year that was used to bail out and give a bunch of free money to corporations and not to the American people. And we can't even get a stimulus check, right? And all of this was going on. So how convenient for all these banks that have been overexposed for years, really, you know, ever since the 2008 financial crisis, which, you know, they just inflated another bubble to sort of try and make that crisis go away, right? That bubble has to pop at some point. How convenient for them that they're saying, oh, this cyber attack's going to come that's going to target the financial industry soon, when that very industry they know has to collapse at some point just because of, you know, math and what's been done to the economy and the monetary system.
Yeah, and it also goes, and I mean, this is, I mean, the whole blaming Russia thing is hilarious to me. When you know, Edward Snowden said in 2013 they came up with software that they could put in to make it look like Russia hacked something.
Yeah, well, that was actually Vault 7. That was WikiLeaks, not Snowden.
Right.
Sorry.
You're right. But yeah, so that's already been uncovered. That they can do this. So it's like how anyone can believe this, and it's just like whenever in doubt, whenever there's a problem, just blame Russia. And they were trying to. I even heard some corporate media in this last couple of days since the Capitol of siege or whatever you want to call it, saying, "Oh, this might have ties to Russia." Like they're already.
Well, also it's Iran. The other one they're trying to say is Iran. Like that crazy senator who thought the Wednesday's events at the Capitol. She came out a day or two ago saying, "Well, when that was going on, I thought it was the Iranians invading DC." What? I mean, on what planet does that lady live on? Or is she trying to sort of like set up this thing that Iran is the boogeyman? And then we have Mike Pompeo today saying Iran's the new home base for Al-Qaeda. Anyway, a lot of these people that were saying the 2020 election is going to be crazy and all of this stuff, were also saying Iran's going to hack this and Iran's going to hack this. And that was being set up by Microsoft, some of these tech companies that are obviously fronts for intelligence. We're all saying Iran this or Russia this. It's going to be Russia and Iran, maybe China. You know, all of these, the convenient adversary states of the U.S. right now are going to be the people responsible for this. And I'm really glad you brought up the Vault 7. Basically, this tool the CIA has had where they can put fingerprints of several nation states to make where the CIA does a hack and make it look like it's another country. This software that is attributed to Iran all the time by mainly Israeli cybersecurity interests who, you know, want a war with Iran. So I'd take what they say with a grain of salt. But anyway, they point to this program that's called Shamoon that's supposed to be like a malware program developed by Iran. If you look at the Vault 7 release in the types of fingerprints that the CIA has to plant in the hacks they conduct, Shamoon is right there. And several things attributed to Iran right there. So, you know, going forward, if there is some sort of power grid thing or hack and we're told it's Iran, we're told it's Russia, we have to remember this stuff. It's going to be used to, one, stress us out. If the power grid goes out, I mean, that's hugely stressful. It's not going to be easy to access the internet. And so it'll probably be radio or it'll be mainstream media we'll be hearing. And they're going to be telling us certain narratives about what's going on. That's why, in my opinion, it's really imperative to see what they're trying to set up and preempt those narratives, because of how the censorship is now. Who knows how much we'll be able to communicate with each other when an event like that, if and when an event like that does take place, right? So it's really important to see what these people are saying. I mean, it's very suspect. It's also worth pointing out that the company, one of the first companies that discovered the SolarWinds hack is this firm called FireEye, which has very deep ties to the CIA. And the guy that used to run FireEye is currently the chair of the board of a company called Cybereason, which is a front company for Israeli intelligence. I wrote about extensively in the beginning of 2020, talking about the 2020 election, pre-planned chaos, and all of this stuff, who were doing these simulations with DHS, with the Secret Service, for crazy cyber attacks on U.S. cities to create maximum chaos and basically the destruction of the electoral system by terrorists, right? Yeah. So, I mean, this is all really wild, and I really wish more people would take a look at this stuff, because I have a feeling, even though the SolarWinds hack isn't being given a lot of mainstream media attention now, I have a feeling if another event does take place, that it will become very relevant at some point. And the Isabel Maxwell tie is wild. I mean, yeah, you can't, to have her fingerprints there, that's not good.
You can't have that. Anytime that family's near anything, something awful is happening. Something.
Yeah.
These are horrible, soulless people. Well, wow. I mean, it really seems like it's like when we had you on several months ago, you talked about they were planning to use this election to divide and everybody. And it seems like it's all playing out, and the SolarWinds, it seems like part of this plan. It seems like, because again, how this, this ties into what happened at the Capitol. And there's news that just came out that I saw this morning that a PSYOP officer, this woman, led a group of people. She works in PSYOPs for the military, and led a group of people of like right wingers or whatever to the Capitol building. Well, and of course she's this beautiful young woman. So it's like, well, it's obviously she went to honeypot school as well, I'm sure. And she can just do these guys. They'll follow her anywhere. And I'm like, this all just seems, and a lot of off-duty cops and military were there. And maybe it's just,
and a bunch of state lawmakers also. Like pretty high-ranking Republicans. I mean, state legislatures. I mean, it's not the same as national level, but I mean, big, political players. I mean, it's really interesting to see that taking place. It's definitely surreal, and it's definitely an event that I think we really need to examine really closely, because as we've talked about today, I mean, it's a very complex event, and there's a lot of question marks, and I think that all deserves really thorough examination. But before we support any sort of legislation or any sort of solution that we're being told we need because of last week's events, we really need to think about the stuff critically. Because I mean, if you boil down the mainstream media narrative, a lot of what they're saying doesn't really hold water in a lot of cases. And if they're saying we have to have accountability to move forward, let's start with the DC police. That's what I say.
Yeah, let's start with the DC police. Let's start with accountability of the CIA, who gets endless money.
Yeah, that's even better. You're right, Graham.
With them. Let's start with accountability of the NSA.
But remember, too, there's a bunch of congressmen, Democratic congressmen, that are ex-CIA analysts and ex-CIA people. And one of them I tweeted about recently, her name's Elisa Slotkin. Right after Wednesday, she was basically like, the post 9/11 era has ended because of Wednesday's events, and now we're entering a new era that's all about domestic terrorism. So, and she's basically saying the war on terror is over, and now it's a war on domestic terror. And that was a lady that was involved in the CIA during the Bush administration, and then served in the Obama administration under the Pentagon. Her main focus, destabilizing Syria and the Middle East.
Great. But she's a Democrat. So
and now she's a Democrat in Congress. Hee-haw. And she's not the only one. There were several candidates that cycle that she was elected in. I think it was 2018, that were all like ex-CIA analysts and stuff. And now we're being told they're Democrats. They're the left. Right?
Right. And then Biden's cabinet's so diverse. Like now women and people of color can be a part of the intelligence state and the never-ending war machine.
Yeah, Avril Haines. Avril Haines is going to be their CIA pick, and she's a woman. How great. Well, you know what? She used to be the diversity consultant for Palantir, the company that helps DHS, lock up immigrants and all of this stuff. But she's the left, right?
Yeah. Hey, diversity.
Palantir is written by Peter Thiel, who thinks the U.S. should be ruled by an absolute monarchy and that freedom and democracy are not compatible. That's who she works for, or worked for. I guess she allegedly left that position when she joined the Biden campaign. But
I don't think these neoliberals, which are the real barrier to real lefty progressive stuff happening, they're the ones that get in the way. I don't think these Vote Any Blue Will Do neoliberals realize how much authoritarian censorship and fascism is coming under the Biden campaign.
Well, let's talk about neoliberalism for a second. I mean, what does that translate into? Half the time, pretty much all the time, it's public-private partnerships. We were talking about what is fascism earlier, how a lot of people define that, right? The merging of the private sector and the public sector. What's a public-private partnership? I'd call it a fascist partnership, in a lot of cases. So neoliberals, I mean, maybe we should stop calling them that and just start calling them fascists so we can, start to identify who the real problem, troublemakers are for the United States as a country, instead of, because I mean, the neoliberals are telling us, oh, those people are the fascists, but they agree on so much. Maybe we should just start using the same term for all of them, and that might simplify things for people.
I like this rebranding, Whitney. I think it's a great marketing.
Well, like here's one example. So one of the people that Biden's going to put in his State Department is Victoria Nuland, who was in this State Department under Hillary during the Obama administration and was involved in the 2014 coup in Ukraine. But before that, she was Dick Cheney's foreign policy advisor.
I just want to interrupt this for our audience. You mentioned Ukraine. So everyone, there was Nazis in the Capitol. Okay, that's really awful. Let us not forget all of the neo-Nazis that Biden and all these Democrats had no problem doing business with in the Ukraine in 2014. Sorry, just wanted to put that in there for our audience.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And that's why the narrative about Wednesday is so dependent on Americans' ignorance of U.S. foreign policy. Because if Americans really knew the stuff done in their name abroad, there's no way that this thing of, oh, this was a coup attempt, this was insurrection, I mean, it would be really hard. I mean, it's not an insurrection or a coup attempt when the people that are supposed to be protecting the Capitol let you inside. Yes. In that case, the insurrectionist or the coup attempt are the DC police, right? So, I mean, why aren't we being like, the DC police need to be held accountable? I mean, that would make sense first before going after the people they let inside. And that they, in some cases, in some videos, are shown signaling come inside, wanting them to come inside.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you look at what happened in Maidan, right, in Ukraine, and I mean, it's really telling. But most people in the U.S., majority of Americans don't even, they probably can't even find Ukraine on a map. I mean, most Americans can't find Afghanistan on a map, and we've been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, they need us to not know what the United States government actually does abroad or domestically. They need us ignorant, and they need us mad and not thinking rationally, because, they benefit and they get to pull the levers of power. But anyway, before we got there, right, I was talking about Victoria Nuland. And so, so she's going to be in the Biden administration. She was in the Obama administration. So you can be like, oh yeah, she's a Democrat, right? That's how they want to paint her. She also used to be a foreign policy advisor to Dick Cheney. And she's married to Robert Kagan, one of the main neocons behind Project for a New American Century, or PNAC. Which is like one of the most notorious neoconservative think tanks ever. Bob Kagan, after PNAC was shut down, created the Foreign Policy Initiative with a big former Romney campaign guy, Dan Senor, also a neocon, and Bill Kristol, right? And, I mean, it's a really good illustration of what I like to call the uniparty, which we saw come together to sort of pre-plan a lot of this election chaos last year, like the Transition Integrity Project being a good example, where you have establishment Democrats working with neocons to sort of game this stuff out, right? And here we are, and we have, basically the same uniparty behind Biden, and now they have like a majority in Congress. I mean, if you think at this point you're going to be able to push the Biden administration left, no, dude. Biden is basically a neocon in terms of policy in a lot of ways. I mean, he's a Republican in any other country. you know, so
he's
to
a
be like,
Republican
oh,
here. He has Republican.
he should be. Well, they don't call him that. They really should, though. Yeah.
It's insane. And the whole, how Americans have been so propagandized, they don't even know what they're saying. When people on the right are like, Joe Biden's a Marxist.
A Marxist. That shit is wild.
I wish he was a Marxist. Boy,
it'd be pretty funny, honestly. But
well, Whitney, thank you so much for taking time out and shedding light on all of this. Where can people watch and follow you and see your stuff?
All right, so I'm still on Twitter, but I think that ship is going to sail pretty soon. So I have, you can find I have a channel on Telegram on Unlimited. It's called Unlimited Hangout, which is, the name of my site, unlimitedhangout.com. That's also the name of my channel on Rockfin. So between those, that's pretty much where you can find all of my stuff. You can also support my work on Patreon. So I have a podcast. It used to be exclusive to Rockfin, but now it's exclusive really to people that support my work on Patreon or Rockfin. Old episodes, but that's only for the most recent episode, right? So all previous episodes you can also find publicly available on SoundCloud, the Unlimited Hangout channel there, if you are interested. My last podcast, I had Robbie Martin of Media Roots on. We talked about the history of Rudy Giuliani and his protege Bernard Kerik, who are intimately involved in the QAnon stuff right now, and also a lot of the election fraud claim shenanigans following the election, and really setting up a lot of the stuff that led to last Wednesday in some ways, and their history with 9/11, and also some really shady stuff with the anthrax attacks, the occupation of Iraq, among other things. So if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, folks, I cannot say enough about how great Rockfin is, because for $10 a month, you get my premium content, Whitney's, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, Kim Iverson, everybody, a lot of these lefty people, and it's blockchain and it's cryptocurrency, and they don't censor us at all. So, so support what Whitney's doing. She's an indie journalist. And as I say, when I say vote with your dollars, don't subscribe to TYT anymore, because they sold out. And people like, they're just like MSNBC light. And
totally.
It's more about Chank's ego than getting involved in a movement, like Medicare for all. He would never support a movement or a cause. It's just some bullshit Justice Democrats, which is just like, oh, great. Coke Zero. That's what Justice Democrats is. It's Coke Zero. So thank you so much, Whitney. Support what Whitney's doing, and we'll have you on the show soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Graham. Take care.
All right. Bye, Whitney.
Bye-bye.
So that was Whitney Webb, everybody. I got to go in about 25 minutes. So I'm going to read these super chats. Please hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel. There's 1,500 people watching. Hit the like button and make sure you've subscribed to this channel. Those are quick things you can do right now. It's free, and you're supporting independent journalists such as myself. And if you're new to Whitney, please subscribe to all her stuff. If you're one of Whitney's followers and that's why you're here, I go live 4 or 5 days a week. I drop 2 to 3 clips a day. So the interview I just did with Whitney, I'm going to cut it up into 3 different segments and drop that in the next 2 days. And if you're a Rockfin premium member or a Patreon member at the $10 level, you'll get this entire live stream. It'll be in the archive. So as soon as the live stream's done, I pull it down off of YouTube, and then it's on Patreon and Rockfin. And the audio versions of this are also on Patreon and Rockfin. And then the audio version as a podcast drops later next week, probably on the Political Vigilante podcast. So please subscribe, all those likes and subscribes. I hate to bang that drum constantly, but it's really important. And those analytics very much help the show. Yeah. Really awesome having Whitney on the show. God, she's so fucking great, man. Over 1,100 likes. Right on. Let's get the likes up to 1,200. Way to go, everybody. I love having her on the show. She's like, I'm not a journalist. I'm a comedian that talks politics, and I like to investigate stuff. But she's like, goes deep as a journalist. I just love, and she just connects these dots. I talk about on the show, follow the money, connects the dots. She does that like a laser, man. I just love having Whitney on the show. I just got mad respect for her. And she's always about waking us up to the intelligence community, and thinking that, oh, the Democrats are better than the Republican. Like, she calls out the squad. She calls out Bernie. They all suck. She's just like, boom, they're awful. And because she follows the facts, she doesn't let her emotions, she used to support Bernie, and but when she saw Bernie do what she did and other people criticized, she didn't go, you're saying mean things to my Bern bro, or you're being critical of AOC, that's sexist. No, when people say sexist stuff about the squad, that's awful and wrong. But when they're critical of them, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, for not doing what they're supposed to do, what they said they were going to do, they deserve our criticism. And that's what I just love about Whitney. She's just a journalist, man. She's coming up fair. It's great. Sharif Snugs, we did that one. Thank you. Max D, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Can't fault anyone from wanting to storm the Capitol, but like all things connected to Trump, this was loud and pointless. So true. Sharif Snugs, Save Your Knuckles for Justice. If Trump doesn't get impeached and we get another Trump in 4 years, is it safe to say that Trumpism is political Teflon Don? Could very well be the case, my friend. 1,200 likes. I love it. OTR Trucker, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Whitney, can you please use the word uniparty in a sentence? This is what I had left of my 600 after I invested in Twinkies for the apocalypse. The American political system is a uniparty. She's saying uniparty, the Republicans and Democrats are the same thing. And you see like, oh, this person in Biden's cabinet was in Obama, but they also worked with Dick Cheney. Like, it's all connected, man. JLG forever. Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Can we help in creating a heaven for both of you when YouTube, a haven, when YouTube inevitably completely shuts down progressive opinions? Is it Rockfin? Yes, it is Rockfin. That's why I've been pushing Rockfin for a year and a half now, knowing full well this day was going to come when they're going to start yanking us. So I'll stay on YouTube as long as I can. Technologically, it's the best platform. It is the best platform technologically, but they're going to censor. They've been censoring us. I've been stuck at 74,100. I was at 74,200 subscribers. Now it's 74,100. You notice that? So it's crazy. David, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Gabriel Akari. Really informative, Graham. Get Whitney on more often. She is a national treasure. Regards from Sweden. Thank you so much for supporting the show from Sweden. I love that we have an international audience. I love that there's people all over the U.S., Canada, Central, South America, all over the world. I love it. I absolutely love it. Donald Smead, keep up the good work. Boom. You as well, my friend. JLG forever. We can't give up. They want us to be discouraged and hopeless. We are our own savers. Take local action to change what you can. Build a movement. Absolutely correct. Boom. Gina G, what's up, Gina? Gina, you said the other day or last week, what was this distraction? Was the Capitol thing? What was it distracting us from? Well, Whitney just told us the solar winds hack. And they're using that solar winds hack to do more xenophobic blame Russia for everything when we probably know it was the CIA. It probably was. Oh, Carl Knight, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Graham and Whitney are two of my favorite crushes. Haha, keep up the great work. Yeah, she's fantastic. Stizef, boom. You are amazing, Stizef. Thank you for supporting the show. Let's get the likes over 1,300. I bet you we could do that. Connie Concepcion, shave 'em. You're making Gotham great again. Vegan guns, vegan guns, vegan guns, vegan guns. I got to tell you, I've been upping the workouts a little bit. Just getting the guns going. Connie Concepcion, QAnon is a CIA psyop. Absolutely. To keep people weak. It's an extension of the MK Ultra program of the 1950s started by Alan Dulles. Yep. Christopher Dobby, who hosts the server for Rockfin? It is blockchain cryptocurrency. Or it's blockchain. So it's on the blockchain. So there isn't one server. Sam Dean, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Zippity Day. What is your favorite alternative to Twitter? I don't know. I think there might be some new ones coming out though. I know there's some grumblings and some people putting some stuff together. So might be more information on that. Mandy Jones. I love you, Whitney. You're my hero. Mandy Jones, you're my hero. Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. Let me see if we can get this where we're at on the. Okay, we'll see what that one. Get some Rockfin tips real quick. Shave your knuckles for justice. Independent Left News. Here's a little Ray for you, brother. Thank you, my friend. Ray is the Ray token is the cryptocurrency that we get paid with on Rockfin. You can also go buy it. You can go to the My Ether network or Mu network and buy Rockfin yourself and be an investor in Ray, in Rockfin. Maria Renali, ciao, Graham. Absolutely love. I'm a Whitney. Ciao, I'm a Whitney. Boom. Thank you, Maria. Steven Zoll, boom. Thank you, Steven, for supporting the show on Rockfin. Sean Carlin, boom. Thank you for supporting the show. Walt Hess, boom. Thank you for supporting the show on the Rockfin. Really appreciate it. Neoliberalism is corporate neo-fascism. You got that. You got that right. You got that right. Sharif Snug, shave your knuckles for justice. I knew it. I knew Big Kale had its ties to the Rothschilds. Kale von Rothschild. The truth is out, Graham. You're getting too close, Sharif. You're asking way too many dangerous questions. You don't want to know the truth about Big Kale. Just let it go. Like every conspiracy movie. You're getting too close, man. The soft white three-way. Shave your knuckles for justice. Whitney, are you wearing a black metal t-shirt or something? I don't know. Maybe she's metal. I don't know Whitney. I only know her politics. I don't know what kind of music she likes. Real politics. What's up? Shave your knuckles for justice. Please check out the YouTube channel Allison McDowell and the YouTube series If We Were Honest on the ArgFest channel. Allison investigations are riveting and overlooked just like Whitney. It would be cool if you to have her on. Great. Thank you for letting me know about other people like that. Yeah, Whitney was somebody, well, you got to check out Whitney. She's covering Epstein. And I started having her on the show about a year ago. And it's just been fantastic. So I appreciate that. Also, it helps too if you if this Allison woman is on Twitter and tweet both of us, that gets us connected. That's the best way because then we can each follow each other on Twitter and then direct message and get it set up. By the way, we're in the works of getting Sean Atwood on the show. Don't have a date yet, but we're going to get Sean on the show. Real politics again. Shave him for justice. Allison also investigates how World Economic Forum and Davos have been working to move capital into the fourth industrial age. Her work is hard to hear for leftists, but really needs to be heard in full. I'm down with that. None of your business. If grid goes down for a period of war, what does it do to Bitcoins? That's a great question. This is a reason why all these crypto channels I watch are always like, get your crypto off of the exchanges and onto a cold wallet. Meaning, if the internet and everything goes down and your crypto is on a cold wallet, at least you have it and it doesn't disappear. And eventually the internet will come back on, eventually, and you'll have access to it. But know this: if they wipe out the internet and they're doing it to wipe out bank account, then we won't have access to regular money. I mean, look at all of our regular money is done digitally. It's all done online bank transfers and payments. And I mean, how often do you personally write a check or use cash? Not a lot. Maybe have a little cash set aside. Rose window, shaving knuckles for justice. Boom, boom, boom. Sharif Snug, shave them. Graham, I don't know if you pay your guests or not, but would it be possible for us to ask your guest a super chat? I'll help to fund that, especially if Whitney Webb or Richard Wolf shows up. For us to ask your guest a super chat. Oh yeah, I know. It's usually just a time thing. Why I don't answer super chats when I have a guest on, because usually they're like, I only got this much time or whatever, and that would add a whole nother thing to it. It's not that I'm opposed to it or I don't want them to answer questions. It's just it would take somebody having, because people have shows or kids or so it's just like, that's the only reason, is just trying to respect the guest's schedule because everybody's time is tight. That's why it's tough. It's not like I think it's a bad, it's mainly a scheduling thing. Cause I really wanted to talk to her for over an hour to get these 3 subjects. Cause I wanted to get these 3 segments and drop them as, well, first I wanted to talk to her cause she's awesome, but then have 3 really good segments to drop as well. So that's why. I hope that answered it. Gary Gerskowitz, land of the free, home of the brave. Yep. Tina Trachtenberg, boom, love Graham and Whitney. Wow, isn't she awesome, man? She just fucking comes on this show and she just starts fucking boom. She just starts throwing fastballs. It's like bam, 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 bam. Whitney just comes in and goes, so this person knows that person. That's why this is connected. And I'm just like, damn, she's great. Jim Garrison, what's up, Jimmy? Shave him. B of A. I just left WhatsApp and got Signal. Is it odd that Google Play Store allows Signal to be downloaded for free when it competes with their own app? Yeah, I don't know what that's about. 1,289 likes. Let's get that up to 1,300. So also another reason to follow Whitney is just because she does like long form articles, columns or whatever you want to call it, written pieces. So all the things she was talking about with the solar wind hack, she's going to release a really detailed article. That's why you got to follow her, because you got to read her full articles, man, on top of watching the interviews, because she just goes so deep. Yeah, Graham, where are you going? I got to drop off my buddy's car. My buddy moved and he needs his car shipped to him. So I'm taking care of that. Ryan Larson, Whitney Webb, USA's Joan of Arc. You got that right. Shave the knuckles for justice. Mandy Jones. What's up, Mandy? Justice Democrats is just Coke Zero. Laugh my ass off. I'm stealing that. Yeah, I know. Graham and Jimmy are the best of the real left. Amen. I know that's a compliment and I appreciate it. It bums me out though, that the reality is I thought all these people were real lefties too. And I thought, they're all real lefty progressives. We might disagree on this or that, but they're all real. And then the force the vote thing just revealed that they're all fake. And it's one thing. Like, I just like knowing the truth. So now I know who people really are. But like all these people going after Jimmy, Tim Black, Humanist Report, TYT. I mean, it's just like, wow. Nomiki Konst, all these people I've promoted, had on the show, some of them interviewed, talked about, supported them, retweeted them, whatever. And then they do this. It's just like, it's a bummer that they're just frauds, or they're petty. I don't like Jimmy, so I don't care if he's got a good idea. Like, if Trump passed Medicare for all, I could love the fact that he gave me free healthcare and still not like him and be glad he's going to be leaving the White House. I could do both of those things. I would be like, I don't want your free healthcare. Like, it's just mind-numbing to me. But sometimes it skips. Derek Graham, get yourself a mastodon. Shave your knuckles for justice. I'll look into that. I'll buy a mastodon. Kate, boom. I thought the DC nonsense was a distraction from the Israel bombing Syria the same day. Yeah, could be. Could very well be, Kate. Great point. Great point. Ryan Larson. Ryan, shave your knuckles for justice. I'm no fan of white nationalists, but don't you think they had the right idea? Seeing Pelosi dragged out, zipped, would have made me giddy. No, exactly. It's like such a conflicting set of emotions. I don't like seeing white nationalists with like Auschwitz flags and Confederate flags in the Capitol building. I don't like that at all. That's not good. That's bad. That's like Germany in the late 20s, early 30s. But just a group of people being fed up with their government and seizing the capital is like, oh, I get it. Mandy Jones, you're making Gotham great again, Mandy. You're my hero also, Graham. Well, thank you, Mandy. You're very sweet. You're very sweet. I wish we were doing live shows again. We will soon. I want to go on the road. I love meeting you folks on the road. It's so much fun. But yeah. Thank you, Mandy. All we can do is talk here or social media, but thanks for supporting what I do. I appreciate it. Real Politics, what's up? I'm not on Twitter, but I'll try to connect y'all. She also has a blog, Wrench in the Gears, where she has some juicy government secrets. Awesome. Cool. I love getting hooked up with other indie journalists that are doing good work. Gina Rivard, what's up, Gina? How you doing? What an eye-opener your show has been today, Graham. Wow. See, isn't it great? I try to get really solid guests on that just do real solid work. I'm just trying to get more people like that. That's why I'm trying to get Sean Atwood on. I'm going to try to get Richard Wolff on the show. I want to go after some like people doing really solid work, big names, doing good stuff. Whitney writes, yeah, like she started as she's more of a written journalist. Like all of the stuff that she's done is like in articles online, like at Mint Press News, at Unlimited Hangout, at Last American Vagabond. So go check out her articles. Her whole Epstein series on Mint Press News is mind blowing, and it's long. It's like a 4-part series, I think. It's in depth. I mean, it's like I was reading it and referencing that article, numerous articles in my videos, and I was like, well, let's just get her on the show. I mean, she's just great. Melissa H. Whitney's home must be walls covered with flow charts and crime walls with different colored string connecting people, government, CIA money. Yeah, probably like one of those detective movies, I'm sure. I'm sure. Wait, Gary Webb's her father? I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that. Is that true? I didn't know that at all. Man, yeah, Gary Webb was a guy who investigated the CIA bringing crack cocaine into America. And then the official police report is he committed suicide by shooting himself in the head twice. If that ain't some CIA shit, I don't know what is. It's Matt S. What's up, Matt? Good to see you, brother. I know you've done some interviews of homeless in LA. What do you feel the ratio of high housing costs, bad economy versus mental illness, substance abuse? I don't know. I mean, it'd be hard for me. I don't have any data to go into percentages, but just from what I've seen, especially since COVID and leading up to COVID, the last, it's way more people who are like had financial hard times. There's still a lot of people that are suffering from mental illness and substance abuse. But then you've got people who, fell on hard times and then fell into drugs and alcohol in the street. But it's like, we have the resources to take care of all of them, but it's definitely since the pandemic started, I saw way more homeless people, just numbers, just more tent cities, more people living on the streets since COVID. And I saw them like have like a dresser and clothing and, like you can tell they moved out of an apartment. They left a home and now they're on the street. And I dropped food off to them and they were very coherent and thank you. And I'm trying to get out of here. And, But that's not to minimize the people that are suffering from mental illness and drug addiction. They need help too. Like, we have the money, we have the resources to help everybody. Yeah, it's brutal. Derek, Mastodon is a decentralized social media platform. Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that. Thank you. I didn't know about that. There's all these new ones popping up, and so I don't know all of them. Thanks for letting me know about that, Derek. I appreciate it. Lucky Burrito, art and music. Are you shaving your knuckles for justice? DOJ website fired Trump apparently on the website. Yeah, there's talk of the DC police charging Trump with inciting a riot because he did that in DC. I don't know. The fallout from all this is going to be insane. Justice Democrats squad, etc. Think of it as staggered power evolution. Graham was ahead of the curve because Steve Mnuchin cleared his thinking early by stealing his home. Yeah, you're correct. Thanks, man. Thanks for that. Yeah, Whitney is ridiculously accurate. So true. Ten years ago, I left Miami, never saw homeless in the suburbs. Now I'm seeing more and more people taking up bus stops as shelter. It's scary. I know. And it's not getting any better. It's not getting any better. All right, everybody. Over 1,300 likes. That's awesome. That's great. That's great. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I think I got them all. Yeah, we got them all. All right, awesome. And thank you to everybody on the Rockfin. Each of us in our own way are broken. The world is falling apart. It's hard to know which ones are crazy, them or us. I know. What is this? Yeah, Jimmy Dore is about to start. I got to run. So let me sing a quick song. I want to sing I Want to Rock and Roll All Night by also, folks, I'm going to be sending out a new newsletter, a monthly newsletter with updates and stuff like that. The Russia doc is just about done. So if you go to grahamelwood.com, there's a thing you can sign up for the newsletter. Just give me your email address and you'll be on our newsletter. And there's going to be cool things. And when I start a store up again, selling merch, there'll be discounts. There'll be info of what's going on. This first one's going to come out in January this month, and it'll kind of recap all the successes we've had of 2020 as a show, as the show's grown and everything. So please go to grahamelwood.com. And just right at the top of the page, you see join the newsletter, put your email address, click, you'll get sent a confirmation. You just click on that. Boom. You're on the email list. Very cool. So go to grahamelwood.com and join our newsletter. Isn't that fun? 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 And I'll send out like one a month, maybe two, but I'm not going to like send out a million of them. I'm not going to drive anybody nuts with it.
Triple protection, old spike sweat defense. It works harder for longer.
You show us everything you've got. You keep on dancing and the room gets hot. You drive us wild. You drive me crazy. You say you want to go for a spin. The party's just begun. We'll let you in. You drive us wild. We'll drive you crazy. You keep on shouting. You keep on shouting. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. You keep on saying you'll be mine for a while. You're looking fancy and I like your style. You drive us wild, we'll drive you crazy. You show us everything you got, beam down. Baby, baby, that's quite a lot. You drive us wild, we'll drive you crazy. Bones, you're driving me crazy. You keep on shouting, Bones. You keep on shouting. I want to rock and roll all night. Beam me down so I can party every day. I want to rock and roll all night, Mr. Sulu, and party every day. I want to rock and roll all night. Every day, I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. I want to rock and roll all night. Everybody now, party every day. I want to rock and roll all night. Spock, and party every day. I feel like I'm being very emphatic on this. Uhura, open up a hailing frequency. I want to party every day. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. Perhaps I should party at night and rock and roll during the day, but we need some kind of rock and roll party 24-hour continuum. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. And party every day. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. I don't know why this is so hard to understand. Why do I have to keep repeating myself? That's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. Make sure you follow Whitney Webb and check out her stuff because she's doing fantastic work. And she's one of the people we all need to support. I'll be live again tomorrow. I'm not sure when or with who, but I'm going to do it. Make sure you subscribe to everybody. Thank you, everybody, supporting the show in the super chat. We've got 1,383 likes. Let's get that up to 1,400 right now. Right now. Do it, do it, do it, do it. Hit the like button. 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 While we're waiting for the likes to get up to 1,400, remember, if you're a Patreon subscriber at the $10 level, this whole chat, not unedited with Whitney, will be on Patreon momentarily after the show ends. And same thing if you're a Rockfin Premium member, they're both $10. And then the podcasts are also available on Patreon and Rockfin. If you're a $5 member on Patreon, if you're a $10 member on the Rockfin, because there's only one level on Rockfin. And then you can sign up to Rockfin for free. I have all my videos that are on YouTube are also on Rockfin, ad free. If you watch on YouTube, watch the ads all the way through. When you click skip ad, I do not get paid. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We're 4 away from hitting 1,400. Come on, do it. 4 more likes. 4 people have not liked the show. I know there's 4 people out there. 3 more people. 3 more people need to like the show. You can do it. 2 more people. 2 more people, 1,400 likes. This is one of our biggest live streams in a while. Who wants to taste it? Come on, hit the like button. I know you've done it. Come on, hit it. $13.99, $13.99. I want to hit the like 1401. We did it and party every day. Thanks everybody. Joni just did the tip. Shave your knuckles for justice on the Rockfin. Really appreciate it. Everybody supporting the show on the Rockfin and on the Facebook. We're all heading over to Jimmy. Right on. Follow Whitney Webb. Have fun at the Jimmy Dore Show. And remember, follow the money, connect the dots, find the truth, shave your knuckles for justice. That's how you're going to make Gotham great again. And party every day.